study, 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 study. Don't be afraid of studying. I don't care if you were a great studier in school or a horrible studier. Study is a learned behavior. Studying is a learned behavior, and if you don't find a way to study, if you don't read well, or if you don't comprehend when you read, there's no excuse now to get it on the book. There's no excuse now to watch. Get it in your eyes. Get it in your ears. Get it in your head, because the only way you can be transformed is if your mind change and if you change your study habits. So let me ask you, what do you want? What do you want to be well? Do you want to be made whole? Here's what the world has bought and told people, even in church, about their life right now. We go after it before we study it. And every time you go after it, before you study it, you fall and you fail again, and then it's only working against your soul. So we got a whole bunch of people that's popping up with a whole bunch of stuff, but when you ask them, did you study that before you moved? Did you study that city? Did you pay attention to the economy there, what the tax bracket was, what the school system was like? No, I just had a feeling, and I just ran after it because you was trying to fill a hole in your soul. And when you got there, you was like, oh, this is a mess. But you could have just did a little research, and nowadays you don't even have to go to the library. You can just Google it. People won't even Google to get information. They'll go after it. God told me. He gave me a word. I'm going after it. Did you do a little due diligence? You could have saved yourself some time and some money. Right? Study. Study before you jump into it. Study is a specific kind of experience in which, through careful attention, the reality of the mind is enabled to move into a certain direction. Study is, give it back. Study is a specific kind of experience in which through careful attention to reality, the mind is enabled to move in a certain direction. What did God tell this man to do? Do you want to be whole? He said, take up your bed, get up, and walk, right? So I'm about to move you. So in order to move you, you got to hear what I said. You got to study what I told you, and you got to be ready to move in it. Because if I study it, I can become it, right? So when we study something, what happens is we see it, we feel it, we understand it, we draw conclusions from it. We see it. Everybody say it with me. Come on. We see it, we feel it, we understand it, we draw conclusions from it. Come on, say it again, in case you didn't write that down, because some of you, if I don't say that, you don't write it down. You missed the whole lesson. You walk out of here like you retained everything I told you. I didn't retain everything I told you. I studied to bring it to you for 10 hours, and then you come in here and don't even take a note and walk out like you got it. You don't got it. We see it, we feel it, we understand it, and we draw conclusions from it. That's all study is. It's not cramming the night before. It's not trying to memorize it. Memorization is not study. I don't have to memorize it all. I don't have to know it all. I have to know how to find it out. We see it, we feel it, we understand it, we draw conclusions from it. As we do this through our thought process, we start conforming to it. Oh, Jesus. We start becoming what we believe. We see it, we feel it, we understand it. We draw conclusions. We see it, we feel it, we understand it. We draw conclusions. Now I start conforming. Now I start getting up. We see it, we feel it, we understand it. We draw conclusions from it. We see it, we feel it, we understand it, we draw conclusions from it. As I start to do this, my thought process takes on an order of conforming to it. Now, my thinking, my behavior starts conforming to what I see, I feel, I understand, right? So when God gives us an instruction, the point and the purpose of this instruction is to direct the mind repeatedly and regularly towards a certain mode of thought. So he says, get up, take up your bed, and walk. When I see it, I feel it, get up. Take up your bed and walk. But I'm still sitting down. Get up. Take up your bed, walk. We see it, we feel it, we understand it. our mind starts conforming. I see myself getting up, taking up my bed and walking. Before I get up, take up my bed and walk, I see myself. The problem is that I never did it because I could never see myself doing it. I only saw myself doing it under the circumstances that were presented before me. Now, Jesus comes and presents a whole nother set of circumstances that I never considered before as an option. And now I have a choice to either believe the old way that I always saw it, or to believe what he just presented to me as a new option. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go with what I've always known because I've seen that for 38 years, and he's only been here for 38 seconds. And he's presenting to me an entirely different option, but in my choice, I have a choice to see it, to feel it, to understand it, to draw conclusion from it. And if I hear his instruction, the point and the purpose of that destruction is to direct my mind repeatedly and regularly towards certain modes of thought. Repeatedly and regularly towards certain modes of thought. Repeatedly and readily towards certain modes of thought. Certain modes of thought. This is how I stay whole. This is how I stay whole. Repeatedly and regularly towards certain modes of thought. I'm studying. What are you doing? I'm studying. Repeatedly and readily towards certain modes of thought. I got out of that, and I'm not going back to that. So what am I replacing that with? Whatever I'm replacing that with is repeatedly and readily towards certain modes of thought. Is it too much? Is it too much for you? Are you processing them? All right, I'm gonna get out your way, right? This lesson blessed me intellectually, because it's not just about how we feel. First, it's about what we think, repeatedly, readily, towards certain modes of thought. Certain modes of thought. So the reality becomes, now when God starts to move us into the mind renewing point of study, then verse 9 says that at once this man was made well. And he took up his bed and began to walk. At once the man was made well. He took up his bed, his mat, and began to walk. At once, he broke the paradigm of everything that he had been stuck in. At once, he chose to believe something, and 38 years fell off him. At once, he chose to hear the instruction and start moving his life towards a certain mode of thought. And everything about his life starts to change. Everything starts to change. Verse 9 says, at once the man was made well. He took up his mat and he began to do what he never done before. At once. 38 years was solved at once. A at-once moment of choosing to hear and to understand brought him into a whole nother place. Development now starts to happen. So he made a decision, and the last thing happens is development.